Most people spend their entire lives trying to be liked, trying to be understood, trying to be accepted. And they call that emotional strength. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Needing people to respond to you a certain way is not strength. It is a quiet, invisible dependency, and it controls you more than any addiction ever could. The person who loses their composure when criticized is not weak because they feel. They are weak because they believed, somewhere deep inside, that their peace depended on someone else's approval. That is the trap, and almost no one sees it clearly. What you are about to explore is not a collection of motivational phrases. It is a framework, tested over centuries by soldiers, emperors, prisoners, and philosophers, for building a mind that cannot be destabilized by the world around it. Not because it feels nothing, but because it has learned where to place its attention. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming free. Look honestly at your life. Think about the last time someone's words ruined your afternoon. Someone's silence made you anxious. Someone's opinion of you quietly reshaped how you saw yourself. This is the modern condition. We are surrounded by stimulation, opinion, reaction, and noise, and we have been trained, slowly and without realizing it, to measure our internal state by external feedback. The result is a person who is technically free, but psychologically enslaved. The problem is not the criticism. It is not the difficult colleague, the toxic relationship, or the competitive environment. The problem is that somewhere along the way, you handed over the keys to your own emotional state, and you gave them to people and circumstances that were never equipped to hold them responsibly. Here is what the psychology tells us. The human brain processes a perceived social threat, a rejection, an insult, a dismissal, through the same neural pathways it uses to process physical danger. Your body does not distinguish between a lion in the field and an embarrassing comment at a meeting. Both produce cortisol. Both trigger the fight-or-flight response. Both demand immediate reaction. And so you react. Not because you chose to, but because biology, habit, and years of unconscious conditioning made the reaction feel like the only option. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, how many decisions have you made from that reactive state? How many words have you spoken from that contracted, defensive place? Words you later regretted, relationships you later damaged, opportunities you quietly closed. Most people never question the reaction. They simply live inside it. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lives your freedom. Marcus Aurelius, who governed one of the most powerful empires in history while navigating war, betrayal, and personal loss, wrote this in his private journal, a journal he never intended anyone to read. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was not writing that for an audience. He was reminding himself daily, because he knew how easy it is, even for an emperor, to be pulled into the current of reaction. He knew that the discipline of the mind is not a gift you receive once. It is a practice you return to every single day. The Stoic habit is simple in theory and demanding in practice. Identify what is within your control and release, genuinely release, what is not. Not as a performance, not as a coping mechanism, but as a philosophical commitment to reality itself. There is a particular trap that intelligent people fall into, and it is worth examining carefully. It is the belief that if you can just think clearly enough about the problem, analyze it, understand it, dissect it, you will eventually feel better about it. But thinking and ruminating are not the same thing, and Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century, warned us about this. He called it the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. The emotions we do not examine do not disappear. they go underground. They begin operating below the level of conscious thought, shaping decisions, distorting perceptions, producing reactions we cannot explain. The trap is believing that emotional control means emotional suppression. It does not. The Stoic was never asked to feel nothing. Epictetus, a man who spent years as an enslaved person before becoming one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, never said stop feeling. He said, understand what your feelings are responding to. Question whether that response serves you, and then choose. That distinction is everything. The shift is this. Stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this asking of me? These are not the same question. The first question positions you as a receiver of circumstances. Passive, victimized, waiting for the world to make sense. The second question positions you as an agent, someone who moves through difficulty with intention, rather than simply enduring it. Think about this. Every difficult emotion you experience is carrying information. Anger tells you something matters. Anxiety tells you something feels uncertain. Grief tells you something had value. None of these are enemies. They are signals. And the emotionally intelligent person, the person the Stoics were training themselves to become, learns to read those signals without being controlled by them. Imagine you receive criticism at work. Not constructive feedback, dismissive criticism, perhaps in front of others. The reactive person contracts. They feel shame, then defensiveness, then perhaps a cold anger that sits in the chest for hours. They replay the moment obsessively. Their productivity collapses, their self-narrative takes damage, and they lose not just the afternoon, but sometimes the week. The person practicing Stoic discipline does something different, not because they felt nothing, but because they have trained themselves to pause before the reaction solidifies. They ask, is there truth in this criticism worth extracting? If yes, they extract it. If no, they set it down. They do not make the other person's poor behavior the center of their internal world. Now apply the same principle to social pressure, to comparison, to the moment you scroll through someone else's success and feel the quiet erosion of your own confidence. That erosion is not caused by their success. It is caused by the meaning you assign to it. And meaning, this is the liberating truth, is something you construct, which means it is something you can reconstruct. Socrates built his entire philosophical life on a single practice, the honest examination of belief, not to destroy belief, but to test it, to hold it up to the light and ask, is this actually true? Not is it comfortable? Not is it familiar? Is it true? Most of the beliefs driving our emotional reactions were never consciously chosen. They were inherited from parents, from culture, from early experiences that encoded meaning into our nervous systems before we had the language to question it. Aristotle spoke of eudaimonia, a word often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as flourishing. He argued that this flourishing was not a feeling you stumbled into. It was the result of living in alignment with your highest faculties. Using reason, practicing virtue, not because it felt good in the moment, but because it was the fullest expression of what a human being could be. Seneca wrote with characteristic directness, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what deserves my attention." There is a lifetime of practice inside that sentence. If this way of thinking resonates with you, this slower, deeper, more honest engagement with your own mind, consider subscribing. This channel exists for people who are genuinely interested in understanding themselves, not just feeling temporarily motivated. Let these questions sit with you. Do not rush past them. Whose opinion are you carrying right now that does not belong to you? What emotional reaction have you been repeating for years without ever questioning whether it serves you? If you genuinely believed that your peace was entirely your own responsibility, not dependent on anyone's behavior, anyone's validation, anyone's understanding, how differently would you move through your days? These are not rhetorical questions. They are diagnostic ones. And the willingness to sit with them honestly, without immediately looking for reassurance, is itself a Stoic practice. Here is what accumulates quietly over time when you commit to this work. You stop losing energy to things that were never worth it. You stop replaying conversations that ended hours ago. You stop editing yourself to manage other people's emotional responses. You stop needing the argument to end in your favor in order to feel okay. And what fills that recovered space is not numbness. It is clarity. It is the ability to see situations and people as they actually are, rather than through the distorting lens of unexamined emotion. It is the capacity to make decisions from a grounded place, rather than a reactive one. People begin to experience you differently, not because you became more agreeable, but because there is something unusually stable about you. Something that doesn't flinch, something that doesn't need to win every small battle because it is quietly certain about the larger ones. That is what emotional untouchability actually looks like. Not armor, not coldness, rootedness. You will be tested today. Something will happen, small or significant, that will attempt to pull you out of yourself. Someone will say something careless. Circumstances will resist you. Reality will not cooperate with your preferences. And in that moment, there will be a space, brief, easy to miss, between what happened and how you respond. The Stoics spent their entire lives learning to find that space and live inside it. Marcus Aurelius was not born an emperor of his own mind. He built it, sentence by sentence, morning by morning, failure by failure. The journal he left behind is not the record of a man who had mastered everything. It is the record of a man who never stopped practicing. That is the invitation. Not to arrive, but to practice. Not to feel nothing, but to choose as often as you can where your attention goes and what deserves the authority of your peace. Your mind is the only territory that is truly yours. Govern it accordingly.